My name is Alex Lockwood. Have you ever been trying to create a work, say a book or a movie, based on the work of someone else who's been dead for a few decades now, but then one day you get a threatening legal letter in the mail from an anthropomorphized mouse? If so, you may have run afoul of copyright law. Now, the example I just gave may not apply specifically to anyone in this room, but I'm sure many of you may be fans of some works that are very old now, that are a few decades old and are affected by these laws, such as perhaps Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. And so, copyright law has gone through a lot of changes since it was first instituted. At first, it only protected just works for 14 years, but now it's gone into like multiple decades after the author's death. So I will be discussing the definition of copyright law and public domain and the history of it, how and why it's changed, and also the implications of the current state of public domain. Now, copyright is defined by the Gale Encyclopedia of American Law as a collection of rights that an author has regarding their own work, mostly, as the name implies, the right to copy it and distribute it, publish it, and it basically prevents other people from ripping you off and just taking your work and selling it as their own. So it encourages the creation of creative works by protecting the income of the creators. It gives them that extra incentive to make these creative works. Now, copyright doesn't last forever, and once the work is reached a certain age, it enters public domain, which means it does not have copyright protections. This includes things like Shakespeare's work. Anyone can go around and do a complete one-to-one copy of a Shakespeare play wherever they want without having to worry about threatening legal letters. Like I said before, when it was first written in way back in the day, it provided 14 years of protection. And it has been lengthened several times since then. This graph here shows when it has been lengthened. It was lengthened in 1790 to 28 years, and then again in 1831, and so on and so on. And what's interesting is these extensions have all been retroactive. So when they were put in place, works that were about to enter the public domain got that deadline pushed back. And significant among the works that were pushed back was Mickey Mouse. You can see here, this lies the so-called Mickey Mouse curve. For both the 1976 Act and the Sonny Bono Act in 1998, Mickey Mouse was on the verge of going into the public domain. And many people have said that this is not a coincidence. According to OpenSecrets.org, a website that tracks the amount of money that companies spend lobbying, Disney has spent between $2 and $6 million every year since 1990 on lobbying efforts. And it's generally accepted, well, it's been stated that Disney's lobbying efforts have directly influenced these extensions of copyright law, of public domain. You know, public domain has a lot of benefits as well. A lot of works that are in public domain aren't really in circulation, and they don't really have anyone, selling them anymore. The original author certainly isn't. So when there are no more restrictions on sharing these works, it becomes a lot easier to get a hold of them, where otherwise they may be lost to history. Jennifer Jenkins, a writer from the Duke Law University, wrote in an article about Public Domain Day that works being in the public domain can help introduce people to works they wouldn't know about otherwise, because they're simply too old, and it can also allow them to be revitalized with people with new, fresh ideas for the IP. And also, while there's been some pushback recently with, in particular, the Winnie the Pooh horror movie, that works going into the public domain may cheapen the original work, but that's only part of the story. If someone makes something based off Winnie the Pooh that's bad, you can just ignore it for the most part. But there'll be many other works that were more in line with the original original style of Winnie the Pooh that can bring joy to children of the current generation. Now, if we still had copyright laws from back in the past where it was more reasonable length of time instead of the 95 years after publication or 70 years after the death of the author that we currently have. All sorts of famous IPs could currently be in public domain, such as Batman or The Wizard of Oz or The Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. Can you imagine the kind of content we would have if anyone was allowed to make new works based off of these IPs instead of what we have now with somehow Palpatine returned? Yeah, the original intent behind copyright isn't really being upheld by these new extensions. I don't think anyone is going to be dissuaded from creating a creative work because they won't be able to continue to profit off of it 50 years after they've died. It's just purely in service of corporations now. So I think it would be best if copyright moved back to a more reasonable time frame, so that creative works can be shared with everyone